Since Monday night, when the Supreme Court's bombshell draft ruling on abortion was leaked, we've heard Democrats respond in a lot of ways. Joe Biden was asked about codifying Roe v. Wade into law.
Mr. President, can it do away with the filibuster to codify Roe?
I'm not prepared to make those judgments now about, but I think the codification of Roe makes a lot
Eric
of sense.
Swalwell, like many House Democrats, said the only way to preserve Roe is to #VoteBlue in 2022. Sean Patrick Maloney, head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, while rightly blaming Republicans for this mess, tweeted, "Only Democrats will protect our freedoms." Will they, though? Will they really? Democrats already control the White House, the Senate, and the House, and haven't been able to codify Roe v. Wade, haven't been able to fix a judiciary and especially a Supreme Court packed by the GOP. I mean, do any of those statements make it sound like the Democrats are taking the gravity of this situation seriously enough? After 50 years of protecting a woman's right to choose, America might be on the verge of wiping it out because Republicans were ruthless, amoral, and power-hungry enough to get their way, while Democrats obsessed over bipartisanship and norms. I'm talking Republicans reshaping the lower courts. I'm talking stolen Supreme Court seats. I'm talking gerrymandering and restricting voting rights, the hiding behind the filibuster. The system we have is broken, and yet many Democrats still seem to believe they could work within that system. They want to follow norms and rules and traditions, while the GOP just burn it all down. This is the party that brings a knife to a gunfight, while the Republicans bring a flamethrower. As journalist Alex Perrine points out in his latest piece on Substack, Senate institutionalists believe the way to make the institution work is not to change its rules, but to somehow change the nature of the opposition. He writes, quote, "The legitimacy crisis is that our institutions are illegitimate. For my entire adult life, beginning with Bush v. Gore, our governing institutions have been avowedly anti-democratic, and the left of center party has no answer for that plain fact, no strategy, no plan except to beg the electorate to give them governing majorities, which they then fail to use to reform the anti-democratic governing institutions." He's right. We've heard nothing from most Democrats that suggests they actually understand how profoundly the Republicans have gamed the system, or even changed the game itself. A lot of Senate Democrats are saying they want to bring the Women's Health Protection Act to a vote, again, to codify Roe. It was blocked before. But we know how that goes. They don't have the votes to bypass the blocking filibuster. Senator Bernie Sanders, for his part, recognized this and said it clearly: we must end the filibuster in order to pass that bill. But even if that happens by some miracle, remember, Joe Biden still isn't prepared for that. You heard him a moment ago. But let's say it happens. The filibuster goes, the House and Senate pass the act, Joe Biden signs it into law. Roe v. Wade is codified. The Republicans will just use their carefully stacked judicial branch to block it, repeal it, undermine it, gut it. What reason do we have to believe otherwise? And as a reminder, here's what's at stake. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, as the draft ruling suggests, the research group, the Guttmacher Institute, says 26 states, more than half of America's states, are certain or likely to outright ban abortion. At the same time, a host of opinion polls show that at the very minimum, half, but more often than not, the vast majority of Americans say Roe should remain in place. There's a new poll from The Economist and YouGov, which found only 14% of Americans think abortion should be made illegal. There is no popular support for this draft ruling, for this Republican Party policy. As Ian Millhiser points out, for the first time in U.S. history, we have 3 justices on the Supreme Court bench who were appointed by a president who lost a popular vote and who were confirmed by a block of senators who represent less than half the country. Welcome to minority rule. America in 2022. Shouldn't this make us angry? One of the few Democrats who has expressed proper outrage is Senator Elizabeth Warren.
This will fall on the poorest women in our continent. This will fall on the young women who have been abused, who are victims of incest. This will fall on those who have been raped. This will fall on mothers who are already struggling to work 3 jobs to be able to support the children they have. Well, I am here because I am angry, and I am here because the United States Congress can change all of this.
Yeah, Congress can change all of this. We've talked about getting rid of the filibuster and about passing D.C. statehood, voting rights protections, expanding the Supreme Court, even impeaching Justice Clarence Thomas for compromising the bench. We've talked about all of that on this show. And these aren't abstract fantasies just to score points for the left. These are almost the only means we have left to try and fix a thoroughly broken and increasingly anti-democratic political system. I mean, do you really think Republicans and their Supreme Court outriders are going to stop at abortion rights? One Senate Democrat who has called out the radical right and urged people to take the threat more seriously is Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, who sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee. She's also the author of A Heart of Fire, an immigrant daughter's story, which is out now in paperback. Senator, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Nice to see you.
People watching at home, Senator, listening to Democrats say, vote blue in November. Why should they? What do you say to people who say they already voted blue in 2018, in 2020, in record numbers, and yet here we are, the right as ever ascendant, getting their way even without popular support, and Democrats unable or unwilling to stop them? To quote one viral tweet I saw, Republicans hate you, Democrats fail you. What's your response to that line of criticism?
I say that the 50-50 Senate sucks, so we clearly need more Democratic pro-choice senators to make sure that we retain the Senate, because make no mistake, if the Republicans take over the House and the Senate, there will be a huge push to pass a national anti-abortion law. And so this is not about state rights. States like Hawaii that has codified Roe v. Wade they're up a creek because it will do no good. So we obviously need more senators who think like I do and Elizabeth and others do, and that's the first step. But really, the kind of outrage that is being expressed by Republicans, saying they're outraged at the leak, but they're not outraged with the fact that we have a right-wing, radical bunch of justices on the Supreme Court who are ready to toss out a constitutional right that women in our country have counted on for almost 50 years. That's the outrage.
And it is an outrage, and what the Republicans are doing is outrageous. But they're doing it nowadays in plain sight. They haven't hidden that this was their game plan, their strategy, their own goal all along. So the question then becomes, what were the Democrats planning to do to stop them? So help our viewers understand the Democrats' playbook right now, because I feel like a lot of people, including myself, have been warning for months, for years now, that Democrats need to do more to protect these institutions that are being exploited, undermined by Republicans. We have minority rule in this country. You can't pass anything in the Senate because of the filibuster. You have a Supreme Court appointment stolen from Barack Obama to create a conservative supermajority on the bench. It looks like nothing's happening when it comes to protecting voting rights or stopping gerrymandering, and now abortion rights, which are backed by a majority of Americans. They're on the line too. So it's all very well saying Republicans are bad. We get that. But what are Democrats doing to try and fix a system which is allowing Republicans to be bad?
The first is to elect more Democrats, because a 50-50 Senate sucks, and you get what we get, which is basically the status quo. And so, yes, we start with more Democratic senators. We get rid of the filibuster. That will enable us to protect voting rights. That will enable us to pass the codify Roe v. Wade, and the kinds of things that we've been talking about wanting to do. And we can't do with a 50-50 Senate. That is the reality. And at the same time, there has to be mobilized action all across our country, because these kinds of anti-abortion laws are being passed at the state level. And so the state legislatures, who gets elected governor, these are all on the table. And everyone needs to recognize that the battle is going to be fought to a huge extent at the legislative and gubernatorial level.
So the problem with look, I get it. Of course, you need more senators to deal with the filibuster, to deal with the Joe Manchin issue. No one's disagreeing with you there. But when you go back and you look at what Democrats have done when they had power. Barack Obama promised to make Roe v. Wade law when he was campaigning in 2007. Then in 2009, he said, when he came to office, he said it would be the first thing he did on day one. He didn't do it. He eventually didn't become a legislative priority at all. Even right now, Joe Biden could take steps to start talking about expanding the court. He hasn't done it. The House of Representatives could launch an investigation into Clarence Thomas. They haven't done it. There are a lot of things you could do right now that you're not doing, your party, that is.
Yes, there are a lot of things we can do right now, but those things are not going to happen. We can start them, but notice that we had 2 impeachment trials that did not end in convictions. So I'm very pragmatic about the fact that numbers matter. And unless we elect more Democrats, we're going to be in the situation. And in fact, same situation. In fact, we could go backwards because we could lose the House and the Senate, but not if there is grassroots mobilization that I'm seeing all across the country. It needs to be sustained because women in this country are being attacked, and it's really like totally frontal assault. You know, they're not even trying to sugarcoat anything. And by the way, suddenly, the Republicans who have been outraged by the leak, suddenly now that they're going to force women to have children, suddenly they're beginning to talk about, oh, maybe we should care about child care. Maybe we should care about maternal health.
Good point.
You know, only after they force women to have babies, though.
That is a good point. I do want to come back to Clarence Thomas. It's something I feel very strongly about. Why has your Senate Judiciary Committee not done anything so far about Justice Clarence Thomas and his refusal to recuse himself over 1-6 and the Trump cases, even though his wife, Ginny, we now know, was literally conspiring to overturn the election for Trump? Your committee chairman, Dick Durbin, said you'd address it after Easter. The story broke at the end of March. It's now the start of May. Is this yet another example of Democrats not doing what the Republicans would do in this situation, which is ruthlessly investigating, holding hearings, censuring, impeaching even?
There was a subcommittee hearing only yesterday about ethics and the judiciary and the need for the Supreme Court to have a code of ethics, which I very much support. So there are so many battles on every front. And I would like to see the Supreme Court abide by recusal rules that are clear. That's certainly not the case right now. I would like the Supreme Court to have to disclose the trips that they go on and the dinners and everything else that they accept. So there's a lot that the Supreme Court can do, and we can push for those. But again, none of these kinds of efforts are going to pass if we have a 60-vote requirement for these things. The Judiciary Committee has been having these kinds of hearings, but it all comes down to the fact that we do not have enough members in the Senate to truly make this happen. And you know what? I'm not going to look back at the things we should have done, could have done. I'm looking at the here and now. And the here and now is women in this country are going to lose their right to control their bodies, and they are going to take action. That is my hope.
Yeah.
Because if that doesn't happen, then we're going to see women dying through botched abortions, and we're going to see all of that happening. And therefore, I believe that this truly is a turning point for our country and the women in our country. And by the way, the radical right-wing justices are not going to stop at overturning Roe.
Agreed.
After marriage equality next.
Agree with you. One last question. Your memoir, Heart of Fire, is out in paperback. You talk in it very eloquently about being a woman of color, navigating a political world filled with powerful white men. What did you make of some of those powerful white men on your own Judiciary Committee and how they treated Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson during her recent Senate confirmation hearings? It's still an uphill battle for women of color in public life, isn't it?
Of course it is. And if you look at the other women of color in particular who came before the Judiciary Committee, Biden nominees, most of whom have been minorities and women of color, he has appointed more women and more minority people with varied experiences than any other president I can think of. But they were given a hard time. So that kind of gender inequality and discrimination is alive and well. And I wrote my book in memory and to honor my courageous mother who changed my life by bringing me to this country, escaping an abusive marriage to my father in Japan. So these kinds of experiences are still being experienced by women, the latest being Justice Jackson. I cannot wait until she gets on that court and starts writing what I hope will be very, very strong dissents to lead the way for where our country needs to go from a judicial standpoint.